often the sleep isn't the thing that's causing the issue. Because really, sometimes we've got to think about it, is it sleep that's the cause of things, or is sleep a symptom? People with sleep problems behave aspirationally around sleep. They go to bed for the sleep they wish they could get, rather than the sleep that they could realistically expect to get. And so sleep restriction is about reducing that time in bed. And we do that by doing the same sort of visual sleep diary, having someone do the behavioral experiment of mapping that out for a week, and then adding up how much sleep they actually had. In this case, it was 38 hours of sleep in the week, averaging 5.4 hours per night, and then allocating them that amount of time in bed plus 30 minutes in the subsequent week, agreeing on the timings, a very machine-like way of thinking about it. Because if we look at how much sleep people actually need, not surprisingly, because it's a biological function that in part has genetic determinants, there's a spread across the population. Sure, the median is around 8 hours, but there's a tail towards the short end and a shorter tail towards the long end. And there have been genetic variations found that are associated with short sleeping, yet not feeling sleepy and not having negative consequences. So there is a partly genetic determinant about it. But how much sleep we need is also determined by state. So someone in a high distress, high arousal state is going to sleep short, and someone in a low arousal state is going to sleep long. So one of the clinical tools I use is I'll use a bell-shaped sort of curve, have a graph, and I'll have on that this nervous energy on the sort of on the bottom axis. And I'll say to patients, where do you think you sit on that nervous energy in terms of the distribution of the population? I'm seeing someone with, let's say, trauma or high distress, anxiety, obsessional thinking, perfectionism, and they'll go, yeah, I'm pretty twitchy, jumpy, and right at the high end of that nervous energy. And then I'll put up this sort of chart with the same bell-shaped curve on it and go, well, where's your expectation around sleep? And their expectations on the median. And I go, well, these two things are biologically incompatible because sleep is intertwinably linked to what's going on physiologically. So it's a way of trying to disconnect this sort of Western industrialized expectation around sleep. And this is demonstrated in sort of some surveys of the Australian population. So the Sleep Health Foundation surveys Australian adults about their sleep every 5 years. This is the results from their 2017 survey, with difficulty falling asleep in about a third of the population, waking during the night in 40%, only 49% of the population rating they got adequate sleep. But the interesting thing is in that same group, they're sleeping for 421 minutes on work days, so 7 hours on work days, and 456 minutes on non-work days, so 7.5 hours on weekends. If you then look at a totally different society, so there's a really nice work from Mozambique looking at sleep in a village. So that's the rural community that slept on the floor with no electricity, and then in a town which had electricity and slept in Western style beds. The sleep length is exactly the same in these populations. So 7 hours and 20 minutes, same as the Australian population. The ones without electricity, which is the right-hand graph, they're awake more during the night in the no electricity environment. And that's largely because they go to bed when the sun goes down and get up when the sun comes up. Whereas those with electricity push the boundary of into the night that they're awake a little longer. But in neither of these groups is there a narrative about I'm not sleeping well. And in fact, in the rural community, there's not even a word in their language for insomnia. Yet they're sleeping the same length in Australia, where there's an epidemic of people saying they're not sleeping well, 50% of the population saying they're not sleeping well. So that's this sleep as a social construct. So once you have this way of thinking about it, you'll hear it in the way people describe sleep. Because people have this Western industrial way of thinking about sleep, it's got spatial and time domains. So it has to occur set place, set time, and under particular circumstances. Whereas a much more fluid way of thinking about sleep is, whatever, whenever, wherever. And in Western society, we have this same construct around wakefulness. I must be awake. That there must be no sleepiness intrude in my wake zone. and I'm going to be equally awake right across 16 hours of the day. Again, it's a very non-biological way of thinking about things. Because a much more healthy long-term relationship with sleep is this fluidity of thinking around sleep. Yeah, anywhere, anytime, any circumstances, I've got the opportunity to have a sleep now, I'm just going to take it now. Or during the night, something on my mind, I'm a bit uncomfortable. Yeah, I'm going to be awake a bit during the night, and that's okay.